Hello and welcome to Kirtan London Journey to Joy podcast, episode number 22, with my good friend, our special guest, Acyuta Gopi, who's joining me live as we go through Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, trying to pull out all of the core messages that the Gita has to share with us to help navigate our lives to a place of joy, to uplift our lives from where we might be currently to where we want to go. I'm so grateful to Acyuta for being with us. She's been with us for a long time already. We've done quite a few episodes together. We're just joking about how many episodes we've done and how many we'll probably end up doing together. But I'm very grateful to her for that. She really has so much wonderful insight. And it's always a real pleasure talking to Acyuta and diving into this wisdom with her. Welcome, Acyuta.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to always be here. If I could just, I really do feel like we just keep going. Let's just keep it going, however it is, however it turns out.
It's a year-long study of chapter 8, as you said, no? Well, most of you probably know, but if you don't know, we always start this podcast with an invocation. An invocation is a prayer to our teachers, a prayer to the divine. We're asking for their blessings and we're showing them our gratitude for this beautiful spiritual practice that we have. And normally Acyuta does that for us. Why would we do it any different? So please, I'll give it to you, Acyuta.
Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Thank you so much. We're on text 15. We're about halfway through chapter 8 now.
We did it after like 6 months.
Yeah, we did it. Woohoo! And it's a really interesting verse. So how do you feel? Should we dive straight into it?
Let's go.
All right. Let me give this one a go. I was just sharing with Acyuta before we went live that I actually was reading this verse yesterday in the gym. I was reading it during my warm-up on the running machine. Some of you might be thinking, really? You go to the gym, Madhva? Yes, sometimes. Doesn't look like it, but 2022, here we go. It's going to be a good year.
And I think it's necessary. Like sometimes you have to use the energy. So move, do stuff.
Yeah, well, I really felt whilst I was reading on my phone this text 15, and I was feeling way more connected to what I was reading than I often do when I'm sitting reading something. I feel like that the fact that your body is moving, your mind is feeling light, and there's a lot of energy flowing through your body when you're exercising. It's a great time to think things through, problem solve, and read Bhagavad Gita, apparently. Because I was reading this verse and something was striking me. Anyway, let me read it. After attaining me, this is Krishna talking to Arjuna. And after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So let me share my thought process, what I was hearing when I read this. So after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion, never return to this temporary world. The word temporary stood out to me, and which is full of miseries. And I was really thinking about this. This is something that sadly is a part of life, is that we suffer. There's and typically, and what we'll see in this verse, actually, if we go through, no, some of the last, actually, it was text 14 of the purport of the previous verse. Prabhupada's talking about the types of people that come to spirituality, and one of them is one of the core groups of people is those who are suffering. So why do we suffer? What is it that's underlying the root cause, or at least one way of looking at the root cause of why we suffer? Because in order to be able to address it, we have to understand it firstly. And it's highlighted in this verse, which is this idea of we are living in a temporary world. Why is that a problem? Because at our core, our nature, our true nature is eternal. Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. We're talking about the soul, right? So who are we really? Are we the body? Are we the mind? Are we all these things? This is our vessel that we're currently using, but the life force which maintains this body is our soul, and our soul is eternal, which means that we like eternal things. If at our true core, there's no beginning, there's no end, we don't ever lose anything of ourselves. In this world, in this material existence, we're born and we die, which means that it's temporary. So even if you manage to hold, and then within that temporality of life, almost everything in this experience is temporary. Mostly everything we have in our life is something temporary. So even if it's the best thing in the world, it's normally at some point can cause us suffering because we lose it. I'm conscious here that this all might sound very morbid, very sad. I'm not trying to be like that. Don't get me wrong. But this is something worth talking about. So even if you manage to hold on to something for your entire life, we're separated from that thing at death. And this is painful because that's not our nature. We're eternal. So what's the goal of life is let's reconnect with that eternal aspect, that truth, who we really are, so that we don't have to keep going through this temporal roundabout. That was
Yeah,
what I was, yeah.
we have less roundabouts here in America.
Oh,
So
we love a roundabout here in England.
I know, like when I was there, I was like, well, okay, we are just going in and around. We have stoplights.
Yeah. Yes, which is great. I don't get me started on roundabouts, Acyuta. As a long-term driving Englishman, I have strong feelings about roundabouts. How they should and shouldn't be used.
Yeah, so we know, Mudboy, you want to get out of this like material situation of roundabouts. They're endless roundabouts, and people using them the wrong way. But
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Acyuta?
yeah, there's like a spiritual philosopher, and they were saying something really interesting, which is also echoed, probably not echoed, but first spoken about in Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's this concept that this idea of suffering and this action, right? This verb, this act of suffering really comes about from like one key thing, and it's forgetfulness. Forgetfulness of our ultimate source is what they were saying. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, in especially like 11th canto, it talks about when the soul forgets the knowledge of its actual nature, then comes this key to all of this like
Mm,
Pandora's box of suffering,
mm,
which is also what you were saying, right? When
mm,
we understand the actual nature of who we are, what we're meant for, what's necessary for us, what we need is actual soul nourishment, then we're much more in alignment. And we find that even though hurdles will come, obstacles will happen, we are able to flow with them much better. When we start forgetting what that true nature is, and we're now looking for it, searching, 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 and inevitably in all the wrong places, we start to get caught up in this movie of, this is my life, these
Mm.
are my friends, these are not my friends, these people are there with me, all these people are trying to oppress me, and we start identifying heavily with the body. It's like getting into a Mustang convertible, and it could be an awesome car and a sports car even, and then you start identifying as that Mustang. Oh, I
Mm.
need to go get a tune up. It's like, dude, do you? Dude, like, what's happened? You don't need a tune up. The car needs a tune up. It's like, I need an oil change. It's like, no, you don't. The car needs an oil change.
Yeah.
You need food. Like, it's different things. Like, it's like, oh, I think I'm gonna go get myself some maintenance. And instead of going and running on a treadmill, you take the car into the shop to get maintenance done. And then you think that that's gonna sustain you.
Yeah.
And then we wonder later on, it's like, well, why am I feeling depressed and overweight, all this stuff? Like, why am I feeling all this stuff that's not doing well for me? It's like, because every time you wanted to do something for you, you went and took the car instead. So when we start identifying so heavily with this running movie, that is all there is, suffering then becomes like inevitable. It's like
Mm.
the natural solution to that mathematical equation. We are feeding the wrong thing, we're paying attention to all the wrong things.
Yeah.
So exactly like you said, when we look at this temporary world, and we as these eternal beings have an eternal heart filled with unlimited desires because we're part and parcel of this unlimited source, and then we look at each other as also limited people with unlimited desires, and we're like, you are going to fulfill all those things, and that usually doesn't work out too well. um, But somehow, if we're able to stay engaged with one another, but with that unlimited source in the center, that being the source of where we get our fulfillment, where we get our nourishment, where we are connecting with each other on the basis of these much higher principles and communities and connections, it breeds much more sustainable community, much more sustainable relationships, a much more sustainable life. Because, like you said, we are no longer just stuck in this rut of dealing with only this temporary world. We need more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Exactly that. I love the analogy that you used about the car and the driver. Perfect. It really, really makes a lot of sense. And then for me to fully understand what you were saying, you were tying that in with this idea of how we should be engaging with each other in our relationships, trying to engage with each other from that place of understanding with the driver in the car. We're not cars engaging with each other. And that leads to more fulfilling, healthier relationships and communities that actually uplift each other. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. And like, so just the other day I was kind of reflecting on a whole bunch of things, and I heard like a statement, and they were like, okay, just for a second. And I know I'd heard it before, but it hit differently that day. And they're like, just for a second, understand that the people that you're having interactions with, maybe you've had arguments with, maybe they've said some spiteful, resentful things, all this stuff. And what if those spiteful, resentful things are, even though they're being said to you, are not at all directed toward you? What if they're all about how they feel about themselves and it's just coming out? This is how it comes out and this is how it's manifesting. But really, all the pushing away, the resentment, the spite, all that stuff is how they feel about themselves. Then how do you deal with it? And it's much easier to then look and detach yourself from that situation when you're not feeling personally attacked,
Mm.
whether in community, whatever the case is.
Right.
And I started thinking about it, and I was like, not only should we look at it in terms of this in with other people, but in our relationship with Krishna, we've been doing the same thing. All the spiteful, resentful things that anybody's ever said to us, I guarantee we've probably at some point lashed out at our creative source and said something along those lines, something
Mm,
along the same feeling. And I really was thinking, I was like, you know what? It's kind of true
mm,
because that's how I treat Krishna. Those spiteful things that come out like, why are you making me so miserable? I thought I could handle this myself, and now look what you've done. And I'm like, Krishna actually did nothing but fulfill the desire that I thought I wanted. Absolutely nothing but try to make me happy. And then on the flip side, I need somebody else to blame because blaming is so much easier than dealing with the, oh, wait, that's me. That's on me.
mm,
My mom was saying that that was a big turning point for her in her life when she first read Bhagavad Gita, was looking at all the things and saying, you mean to tell me that I have to just sit with this and not be able to blame anybody else for it? Like, I have to actually get real with myself and acknowledge that this is me? But that's what Krishna is saying. The minute we start acknowledging it, the minute we start trying to heal from that, is then when we become yogis in devotion to Sri Krishna, then having attained that realization, that remembrance that, oh, wait, that's right, I'm driving. I am not
mm,
this Mustang.
mm,
Then even and later on he goes to say this, you know, you reside in the spiritual world even while living in this material world. You can do both things at once because it's about that intention and that mindset. And when we start operating from that place of higher consciousness, which is really what that means for me, this higher consciousness is actually just being conscious, acknowledging that, okay, there are a lot of quirks and faults and stuff, and I can't fix them all right now. But my supreme best friend is not asking me to fix them all right now, just asking me to acknowledge them. And then remember that I am the driver in the driver's seat, which means you actually do have control over a lot. We have a lot of control over a lot of things, more than we give ourselves credit for, because our mindsets tend to manifest all of these different situations. And this is what Krishna is talking about in this entirety of this whole section. What you think about is what you will attain. What you are meditating on will become your reality. Whether in this life or in the next, what you are constantly focused on, that's what's going to happen. What your heart's honest, real desire is what will come to fruition. And, you know, we kind of keep living in this place where we're like, yeah, sure, maybe that works. But I've wanted $1 million for so long, but how come I don't have it? And it's like, because you haven't actually wanted $1 million for so long. We fool ourselves into thinking that, but what have we actually wanted? Maybe we wanted security. Maybe we wanted love and acceptance. Maybe we wanted validation. And then we put that under the umbrella of, if I had $1 million, I'd solve all that with that. So if we really look at the things that we really honestly want, and even the things that we have feared, if we have put enough faith in that fear, there's loads of times where people are like, see, I feared the worst was going to happen. Look, there it is. It's like, well, of course, because our supreme friend is constantly telling us, he's like, look, this whole system, this whole material world matrix is built on the running desires of you spirit souls. That's the only reason it exists. That's the only reason we have all these situations. It's running off of the desires of these millions, billions of spirit souls. So he's like, I've been telling you this the entire time. What you continually focus on is what you will achieve, good or bad. Which is crazy to think about when I think about the state of the world. It's like, yikes, what have we been collectively meditating on?
wow. trying to put into a nutshell, just trying to make sure I've heard you and understood you, because you said a lot, and then that last point, yeah. So that last point, at least that you were saying, was the last thing I had in my mind, which was that essentially it's God is reciprocal. You call them our supreme friend. I love that. I love how you call them our supreme friend is reciprocal.
Yeah.
And so he's responding to what our deep desires are. And what we're trying to do, if I heard you correctly, what we're trying to do, even through this kind of activity, is we're trying to realign what is our deepest desire. So that, because that's what our supreme friend is going to give us. And if we start to even just try to realign that desire from always thinking about, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. You didn't say this, but this is what I was reading between the lines. If we can start to realign that, even so, to, for example, how can I serve you, my supreme friend? How can I start to realign my desires to spiritually uplifting desires? Let's just put it that, for want of a better way of saying it, to spiritually uplifting desire. Even just starting that journey, even just acknowledging that this is what I want to start doing. You don't have to be perfect to start, but just starting that is already is fantastic. Is powerful. You're now on this path of a yogi in devotion.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's like sometimes the ideal sounds so lofty, like realigning with this spiritual consciousness. You know, it's like, what does that really mean? And I'm like, well, intrinsically, our nature is to be spiritual entities. We are spiritual entities driving material bodies around.
Right.
So it's not so far from what's already innately here. And that's why I use the analogy of money and then saying, but why didn't I get my $1 million? And it's like, because what is it that you actually wanted? Was it just the money? Probably not. But when we're thinking like these spiritual ideals, you know, some people think about all this stuff. Oh, you have to renounce and do this and all this stuff. It's like, no, no, no. Get real with actually what you want. Get real with saying, I think I feel this like lacking of security. I would like security
Yeah.
because that's real and also spiritually aligned. Like
Right.
security is a spiritual concept. Validation is a spiritual concept. Acceptance, compassion, love, forgiveness, all of those are spiritual concepts. So aligning ourselves spiritually doesn't mean that we have to throw out everything else that we've been doing, which is also what I love. We just have to get really honest and sincere and authentic about it. Dig deeper past the one material thing that I think will make this happen and down to the core principle of what is it I'm searching for.
Okay. Okay. Which, this is very interesting, because to me, this is interesting to me because I feel like I've experienced this disconnect between what's my real needs, what are my actual feelings, what are my actual needs. And if I'm feeling like that, and I'm in my own discussions with friends in my life, those around me, I see similarities. This must be a common problem for many people, which is that we're so disconnected from our real self. We don't understand ourselves very well.
Yeah.
As in general, people don't understand themselves very well. And what you're saying is that this is actually can be used as, this is part of spirituality, is learning to understand yourself. Because when you go down to those deeper needs are often not incompatible. At least they're not incompatible with spirituality. The surface level things that we say is our need can often be incompatible with spirituality. Or at least there's an analogy of, you're trying to make a fire. It's like pouring water onto the wood.
Mm-hmm.
It's not conducive to creating a fire. So a lot of those surface level needs can be like that, perhaps. I need money, so I'm going to go out and commit a crime or whatever it might be. I don't know. But that's an extreme case, but we end up doing things which, or at least, yeah. Anyway, that's an extreme example, but it can be more normal than that. Versus my need is for security. And so then how does that tie into a spiritual? I can see how if you were to say, my need is for security, let me understand how that need can be met through a spiritual path. But just that inherent understanding of my need for security, how does that tie in with spirituality?
I mean, Krishna says, just the verse before, it's like, it's as easy as remembrance. As easy as remembrance. It's simple.
Yeah.
Quote, simple, says the guy who rules the universe. Simple. But so like, when we finally come to that conclusion, it's like, okay, I think I really have a need for security and I have a need for stability. Then where do we go? We go back to our friend and we say, okay, friend, here I am. And you've been telling me this whole time that what I meditate on, this is a co-creation process. So if it is a co-creation process, then I'm asking. I think I need stability and some security in order for this whole material world situation, in order for it to work. I need that to keep going.
Mm,
So you show me, guide me, use me, help me. And
mm,
once we start opening up, that is surrender. That's surrender. It's like you get on a plane, you know where the plane's destination is. We don't know how to fly a plane, how the plane works, or how the plane is even going to get there.
mm,
We put our faith in the plane and in the pilot. So we know where we started, we know what our destination is. Same with us in life. We know where we started, we know what we are feeling deficient in, and we know what we want at the end.
mm,
Then comes the part where we put our faith in Krishna as that pilot and the plane. Like the destination might be weird. I don't know how to get there, but you do. And you've said that all I have to do is come to this awareness, this acknowledgement.
mm.
And then I can come to you with this awareness and this acknowledgement. And then that's when miracles happen. And then our supreme friend starts putting people in position where they need to be in order for that security to actually happen. And it may include lots of money. It may include wealth in a different way. It may like, but what
I see.
happens is we start
Mm,
seeing how spiritually and with a real deep mindset, like connected mind, heart, soul, all the stuff starts to be connected. And it's much more fulfilling and it has much longer reaching uh, dividends. I hate to talk like an investor, but
yeah, yeah,
I feel like what we get in return lasts much longer than depending on this temporary fix.
yeah. Yes, right. I love that. Beautiful. Understanding ourselves and then presenting ourselves to Krishna in our true at a true deep level,
Hmm.
and then praying, offering ourselves at that from that place to Krishna, rather than offering ourselves from a disconnected, superficial place. You're gonna go further if we
Yeah,
can learn
and
to
what
do
we
that.
and what we get will be much more true
Yeah,
because the longer we approach Krishna with these surface needs and we're hiding all this the other stuff, what we get will also be counterfeit.
yeah,
Fake notes, that's all we get.
right, exactly. And it's so you sometimes feel like I've experienced this. I'm looking for a certain thing, and I might think I'm looking for happiness, and I
Hmm.
think if I go to this party, it's going to make me happy, and I go there and I'm so malnourished. I feel so let down, missold. This isn't what I wanted. This is not what I
Yeah.
was told. I was meant to be happy here. This was meant to solve my life's problems right now.
Yeah. I
Why am
got
I
cheated.
more depressed? Yeah, because we don't know what we really need. It's such a valuable. This point is really, if people can understand this, it would help so many people. You got to be real honest. You got to be a little vulnerable to understand what are my real needs.
Hmm. And I'm constantly asking myself, and it's one of those things like, okay, dig deeper, dig deeper. And that
Mm,
doesn't mean that we don't need funds and money. Of course we do. And we'd like to have nice things, of course. But once we are linking that with something much more aware and conscious,
yes.
we get it consciously, we spend it consciously. It's
Yes.
actually now working in the realm of spiritual opulence.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, the next verse too is like the,
Well,
the next verse is one of my favorites.
It's incredible because it just drives it home even more. I love it. Let's hear it.
Okay. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. I love this verse because, as Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport, as persons on earth are elevated to higher planets, people on higher planets, such as Brahmaloka, Chandraloka, and Indraloka, fall down to earth. And that for me, like without getting into like the science of it, which kind of makes my brain hurt, what Krishna is saying is like, if you think about it, the planet of the creator, Brahmaloka, you think about all the universal planets that are out there, everybody's going through the same struggle.
I thought you were going to say something else there.
That too. They're going through that one too.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's going through it. No one is exempt. Even up to the creator. You'd think he'd have it easier, right? Like, like the billionaire should have it easier. Yeah, he doesn't. The same depression, the same lacking, the same limited. It's like this unlimited heart trying to take from this limited well, and everybody's trying to take from this limited well. And meanwhile, our unlimited ocean is like, I'm standing right here. Okay, nobody's looking at me, but I'm here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of love it because everybody's in the same boat. And I think before I used to look at it like, well, that's depressing. Like there's nowhere you can go. And it's like, wait, no, it's not depressing. To me,
Yeah.
that feels uplifting because everybody knows how you feel. All those times when you're like, it's just me and I'm going through this whole thing alone. You're not. It's the entire creation. This entire creation is going through the same thing. But there is a key. Like we can make it out.
Mm.
And even it's like it's not even like a physical get out, right? That switch of the mind, and then all of a sudden, wait a second, like I'm starting to see a little clearer now. Like
Mm.
you get sick, you take the medicine, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow. Or when you've been looking at things your whole life, and then you realize you need glasses, and then you finally look at the glasses, and you're like, this is what it actually looks like. You're
Yeah.
like, I've been half blind for a really long time. So yeah, I feel like, spiritually we're kind of like that. We're asleep, a little blinded, it's all cloudy and foggy. And then we
Mm.
start awakening to some of these deeper truths. Those are not always pretty. Like, make no mistake about it. He said all are places of misery. Like, it's not gonna be pretty. The awakening part doesn't always look great. Sometimes it feels like everything inside you is being like squeezed up, and it's confusing and it's upsetting, and you could kind of feel like my palms are my palms are sweaty, my knees are weak, all this stuff sounds exactly like Arjuna at the beginning of this book. Yes, that's exactly what happens. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But the wonderful thing is that means a breakthrough is on the way. There's some clarity coming, a miracle is coming. That incredible pressure, those pressure points, I feel like are indicators that if we stick with it and if we turn just the right direction, if we realign once again, if we recalibrate that spiritual GPS, a miracle's coming.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you that is that the key. If we take that moment to realign that spiritual GPS, that's when those moments become those pressure moments can transform us versus leading us deeper and deeper into a pit. Because I feel like they can also do that,
Yeah.
depending on how we approach the different struggles that each of us are facing in our lives.
Those dark nights can take us some really dark places.
Yeah,
And sometimes the tunnel that you're in seems never ending.
right.
So you often hear it's like, oh, just hold on to the end of the tunnel. It's like, what if you can't see the end of the tunnel and you have no idea where the end of the tunnel is, and it's all dark and terrible the entire time.
Yeah, yeah.
And really, quite honestly, I think in those moments, having this, like you said, there's something about it when you were talking about working out and feeling like you understood what was
Mm,
happening better.
mm,
And I feel like when we're going through something and you have to do this mind over matter, like you've got to take the mind somewhere else. Because I don't like working out. I'll do it, but I don't like it.
mm,
And I won't like it the whole time. I'll love it when I'm done. But the entire, like when the endorphin rush happens, runner's high and all that stuff, it's so real. I'll feel great. Beginning, middle, I hate it. But if I take my mind somewhere else, like getting a tattoo, you have to take your mind somewhere else.
mm.
And this is it. I feel like it's the same when our emotions are doing it to us. When our emotions are sitting there jabbing at us, the mind is jabbing at it. It'll never work. It'll never work. It'll never work. It'll never work. And I've tried to like, whoa, what kind of japa was I just chanting? And so I will actually snap myself out of it at times when I'm like, whoa, I'm chanting like negative japa right now. And japa is just recitation of a mantra. So just as we have positive mantras, we have those negative ones, and they will sound the loudest. And you'll tell yourself a million times a day, it'll never work, it'll never work, it'll never work. I'm like, what? Time to replace that mantra. Like it is time to chant different japa.
Right.
Because if I don't, it's a complete loss. And for me, I always feel like there's no failure in spiritual life. And I've been talking about this with a few friends, but there's no failure in spiritual life. And I really do believe that. But I also feel like the only thing akin to feeling like failure is when I feel like I've given up on me, on Krishna, on the whole thing. And even then, even if I give up, Krishna's not going to give up.
Yeah.
Krishna's not going to give up, but I can't fool myself into thinking this other situation will make it all better. The bigger house will make it all better. The bigger room will make it all better. The different political party will make it all better. A different country will make it all better. It won't, because this entire creation, all the planets, higher, lower, whatever, doesn't matter where it is, there's some misery there because that's how this place is built.
Mm.
But we can get out.
If we're smart, if we're smart. And this is where most people don't get it. This is where most people don't get it. And if, for example, how do most people deal with suffering? And this, not everyone, but typically, how do most people deal with suffering in this world? What do
Yeah,
we
you run from it as fast as you can. You stuff something else in the place, and you try to forget about it as quickly as possible.
it's exactly that. And for me, for example, possibly addiction to my phone, perhaps addiction to, because I noticed that it's a distraction. I switch off from what's happening really deep inside me. This little thing, could have used a different word there. This little thing is a distraction from what's really going on inside me. And I've noticed myself, even sometimes consciously, I'll disconnect from my whatever's happening. And that's just, you could call this a soft way of disconnecting from suffering, but mostly people are turning to drugs and alcohol. That's the main thing that, at least from my perspective, what I see people
I
doing.
mean, yeah, there's a whole bunch. There's drugs, there's alcohol, there's casual sex, there's shopping sprees, there's unhealthy eating, there's all of these
Exactly. All of these
coping
things.
mechanisms that people
Coping.
are trying, right? But we're trying to use a material band-aid for a spiritual wound.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make here.
Hmm.
And it's tough because it seems to me like most people aren't even aware until we really, really, really suffer. It seems like it's very easy to just cope and to pretend like we're happy and to pretend that everything's fine and to say that we're enjoying. We don't even realize that we're suffering sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
until it becomes unbearable, that there's no hiding from it anymore, that there's no denying the pitiable condition that we are experiencing within us. And often that's when people say, there has to be another way.
Yeah, all of us have to hit our own rock bottom. You have
Yeah.
to hit rock bottom. You've got otherwise there is no changing. Our natures are so incredibly stubborn.
Yeah.
You see it, they make documentaries about people with like hoarding addictions, all this to anything. And I it behooves us to really think about the fact that we are all addicted to something.
Yes.
It's
Exactly.
why
That's
we're
why I
here.
highlight myself first.
Yeah. It's why we're here. And I've done the same. I've had to put like special measures in place for me away from my phone because I've started to like I found spiritual ways of justifying it. Like I'm like, well, I'm a spiritual content creator. Like my whole work is to do this. And I was like, yeah, but not that. Not the obsessing over how many likes it got in the past hour. That's not part of your work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's not don't do that because I will justify it. And I'm like, no, this is research. This is good. This is part of like my calling, my purpose. And I'm like, nah, let's get real.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah. Yeah.
really break it down what we're doing here. So I've had to put measures in place. I will give myself a limit. I my phone lives on do not disturb. And it's not because of anybody else, but if I don't get the alerts, I won't look at it. Like
Yeah.
if my phone is not constantly lighting up and doing all this stuff, then I'm like, cool. And then I have to consciously remind myself, I'm like, okay, check for messages from the important people. Like it makes me focus on what is actually important and actually for work and calling. And then what's all my frivolous stuff that will take me down this rabbit hole. Because
Mm.
it starts with, oh, this is for my work. And it ends with, everybody else's life is so much better than mine.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, especially the world that we live in now, is so
Yeah.
it's actually so non-conducive to happiness, in my opinion. From what I can see, we live in a fake world, and it's only getting more. It's only getting scarier.
It actually runs on us not being happy.
Yeah.
This world runs on us not being as happy as possible. It keeps us buying, keeps us talking to other people,
Because if we
keeps
were happy
stock
and
markets
content,
going.
why do we need more stuff?
Exactly. Yeah. We really actually don't. And
We're so sold on this world. Even for me, someone who's got this spiritual aspect to my life, which I've grown up with since birth, and exposure to outside of the box thinkers, and it's tough. It's so indoctrinated into my psyche, the mainstream narrative about what's going to make me happy, that it's almost difficult to pull myself out of it and to really realize, wait, no, this isn't what's going to make me happy. Imagine if someone hasn't been raised with that, if you've never had the alternative narrative, if you've never been offered anything higher, we're sold in this, I don't know what to call it. It's a
it's
complete fake world that we
it
believe
is.
100% to be true.
And
And there's no other alternative.
right. And this is why, and Bhakti Maharaj talks about it so much. He's like, and we wonder why we see so many cases of trauma, why we see so much abuse, why we see so much, like so many things that go on. And you're thinking, well, why would people do this to one another? Why would people treat one another this way? It's because nobody's happy. And rather than actually facing that and looking and saying, huh, and none of these things that I've bought or accumulated or acquired or stuffed into none of that is actually working. What is the actual problem? That takes more work. Sometimes doing is easier than feeling. And I just written that today. I was like, doing is easier than feeling. But when we keep fooling ourselves, like, oh, I've got this jam-packed to-do list. It's like, but it's not really satisfying what you need. And it gets even harder.
Damn
Like the
it.
more you, huh?
I said, damn it. Ouch. Painful truth.
Right? Yeah, it's like, oh, well, I'll take on another project. And it's like, what about that is actually helping you? I was doing a tarot reading for a friend. Well, that wasn't a friend, client. And they were looking into being like a business analyst or accountant. And I was like, I'm reading these cards. I'm like, I don't think that this is what's going to make you happy. I think you have another purpose. They're like, well, yeah, actually, I've always wanted to start my own restaurant. And I said, well, why don't you? Why not take all of this determination and invest in what your calling is?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what if I switched to computer analyst? I was like, you think changing the word analyst before is going to fool the universe? You think it's going to fool your soul? Like that, it doesn't work. And
Been
we
in that
do that,
space.
huh?
The person you're talking about, I've been in that space. I can relate
And we
exactly.
do that instead of actually investing in what's actually going to feed us and give us purpose and propel us in our lives. We're like, yeah, no, I can't do that. Let me just go and do this temporary situation over here. Let me fix this for a while because that feels like what I can fix. And I'm like, but all that determination that it would still take, because whether you work in corporate or whether you don't, like you're still putting in these 14, 16-hour days. But what if you did that for your calling?
Yeah.
Then what? Like you might actually see greater return.
Mm.
So because we're so afraid to invest in ourselves, and then also afraid to actually look at what our calling is and what we need, because how does that fit in with the world's purpose? Like, what if my parents don't think that's a good idea? What if? But at some point, you're going to be so unhappy that it would have made more sense to invest in yourself 5 years ago than now, when you've lost all your hair and you look bedraggled and you're all dragged out. You don't even live in the same place anymore. You can't even figure out how to like get yourself back to your baseline.
Mm.
And we do this our entire lives, and we do it with each other. And like you said, it's, if you don't have the other narrative, if you don't have anything else. I mean, it was hard for Arjuna. Arjuna is the narrative. Like, and it was hard for him. It's hard for him to pull himself out of this mindset of, no, 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 this rat race is all there is. He's so caught up in it. And Krishna's like, pull back, pull back. You got tunnel vision on the wrong thing.
Mm. Okay, okay, okay. I'm just looking quickly to this because I love this verse that we've just read. I
Mm.
love and this I love this point. I'm just looking in this purport real quick to see if Prabhupada un, unwraps any further some of these things. The other thing that I wanted to highlight here is we've been talking a lot about the problem, but he's given us the solution as well.
Mm.
He's given us the solution. Fine. So I got all this stuff going on. I'm not connected with myself on so many levels. I'm feeling unhappy, unsatisfied, miserable. Now I'm being told, okay, well, that's kind of the nature of this world, actually. All right, well, what the hell do I do about it? Where do I go with this? We've spoken about it. You've talked about it. This idea of turning to our supreme friend and offering our real self to Krishna in that sense. And that's what Prabhupada is saying here. One who attains my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So this is Krishna talking to Arjuna. One who attains my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So then in the purport, Prabhupada, just the last couple sentences, what does he say here? Those who progress in Krishna consciousness on the higher
Yeah.
planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom.
See, now I have an extra little thing. It says, according to their desires. Because, they've updated some things, but so
Oh,
the
really? You have
very
it there? Nice.
yeah, at the last few words, or it's like, they're transferred to spiritual universe and specific spiritual planets according to their desires. And this is what we've been talking about, this whole idea of getting in touch with, like, what are the real desires here?
Yeah.
What's really going on?
Yeah.
Because those desires are going to determine everything,
Yeah.
from how your day goes and you could say, you're like, yeah, but I was having a good day. I didn't know that person was going to cut me off, and that's what caused my bad day. I was like, is it though? Or are we still focused on the person that cut you off 6 hours later, and that's what caused your bad day? The focus.
Mm.
because that person's
Absolutely.
gone.
Yeah.
They went on about their lives. They're not even thinking about you. They don't know you. Their life is just the same. But for us now, it's like, no, but that caused my bad day. I'm like, did it? Or was it our focus?
Mm.
Was it our desires?
Oof. Taking
Right? It's
responsibility.
so
That was the other thing
uncomfortable.
you said. Yeah, that other thing you said that I really loved. But you've said so much. I didn't get to pick up on that. But taking that responsibility for where we're at. Step one, actually, taking responsibility for where we're at. It's painful. I know.
Yeah, right? It's like,
Trust me, I know.
and it's exactly like you said, it's like, well, fine, I got this whole problem. Great, I'm taking responsibility. Fine, it's all my fault, whatever. But now what? Like, now what? Now that I've beaten myself up about it. It's like, no, not to beat yourself up about it, just to be aware. You don't beat yourself up about getting a fever. You're like, oh no, the fever happened. It's not like, I can't believe I got sick. I'm stupid. So stupid. It's like, no, whoa, chill. You just got a fever, dude. Just chill. We'll give you some medicine. You'll heal right up. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, in the same way, we can't look at this whole situation and be like, oh, I've been an idiot. You're like, okay, calm down. One. Two, now we look at it. And it's like, but what do I really want? It's like, I don't know. I just feel so disconnected. Great, start there.
Yeah.
Just start there. You know what I want? Real connection. I'm ready for real connections.
Yeah.
And if that was our focus, if we turned that into a mantra that you recited daily, you wake up in the morning, you're like, all right, friend, grateful to be here and I'm ready for real connections. Oh my God, it would bring such a monumental shift. It
Wow.
would bring such a spiritual revolution to your entire life. And you haven't even done anything
Yeah.
but shifted your focus.
Yeah. Yeah. How would you recommend someone start this path, start doing that? How can, so now that we've discussed, you've been saying this idea of getting to know ourselves deeper and then presenting that depth and offering that and praying from that place to Krishna, to our supreme friend, to God, whatever you want to call him.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any other thoughts on how we can start to move ourselves away from the distractions and the pain and the misguidance towards something which is going to continue to start to actually solve our problems, and it's going to actually really go to the core of the issue?
So glad you asked.
Well, you never ask.
Yeah, for me, nah, not for me, for everybody. Okay, this is a for everybody thing.
Yeah.
Journal, 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 journal.
Really?
Write it down. Journal. Write it down. And like, even especially when you don't feel like writing it down. Because those are the moments. It's like, yeah, okay, this journal practice. And it doesn't have to be long, but you can start with like 3 things that you really need. Really need. Think about why even if it's money, think about why you want the money. Think about the things that you want to do. And it'll start helping you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the layers of who we are. And you can turn those journal entries into prayer letters later on. Well, my friend, I was thinking, and I'm ready for this. I need this in my life. It shifts the focus. But if we think about it, especially on the days you're like, I don't even feel like doing this. This is stupid. Okay, why? Who is it saying that? Is it you? Or is it the mind up here saying, it's uncomfortable. I don't want to get in touch. And then, because when the mind fires back, well, I don't even know what to write. Good, start there. I'm journaling and I don't know what to write, but I'm journaling because, and the next thing you know, everything starts flowing. Talk about your day. It's a horrible, crappy day. This is why. And I do this with my 10-year-old all the time. She has to like write things. She's like, I never know what to write. I'm like, of course you do. Start with that. She's like, what? I'm like, just start by, I don't know what to write. And then write about why you don't know what to write. And then
Mm.
before you know it, you've written a whole bunch of stuff.
Mm. I tried.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fine. So then, here's my, I suppose this is it's such a, I don't want to say institutionalized way of thinking, or because I was thinking, okay, well, how do we tie that into God? It's probably a really institutionalized way of saying that, right? Look at me with my typical institution mind. Well, we've got to think
Well,
about
here's the
God,
thing.
right?
How is it separate from God? If
Right.
Krishna is constantly saying, he's like, I am the self,
Yeah.
the indwelling self of all beings. And I'm like, journal. It'll get you in touch with yourself. How is that different?
Yeah.
Seems like exactly the same.
All right. I've heard it many times. I've actually heard this many times. Never quite so passionately, though.
Do it. It'll probably change your life.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Beautiful. So journaling with the goal,
Oh,
by the
yeah.
sound of it,
So that's another thing. Like, okay, yes, journaling will help. The second thing is we need to start giving ourselves feasible goals.
yeah,
Don't sit there like, I'm going to have a journal practice where I journal 5 pages every day. Don't do that
yeah,
because that's ridiculous. Because there are some days where maybe, yeah, that'll happen. And then there are a lot of days where it probably won't. And that has to be okay. You can just start with like, even if you're like, I'm not good at writing, just make a list. Just start with a list. The things that I'm grateful for this day, things that I feel crappy about this day.
okay,
Yeah, feasible goals. And then as your practice or your relationship with journaling grows, then let it grow organically. But don't like, yeah, it's so tough. And when we start off, there's like this idea, even in spirituality. Okay, you started, okay, chant japa, chant 1 round, and now chant 16. Like, like, whoa, can't we just can't we chill at like 1 or 2 for some time and then see how sustainable it is? Let it grow. Let this relationship kind of like, you know, milk itself. Like, let it. No, 1 to 16. That's it. And then all the regulative principles, all of them. It's like, I just, like, can I work my way up to it? Work your way up to it.
yeah. So what I'm hearing is, as well, part of this is making time to stop being distracted. That's that's part of journaling, right? Is you're sitting down and you're giving yourself time with yourself to learn about yourself, rather than either distracting yourself with this, distracting yourself with food, distracting yourself with alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
shopping, but sitting with yourself. And that's one of the most powerful things you can do. It's probably one of the scariest things you can do as well.
Yeah.
But it's one
And
of
if
the most,
you're like,
yeah,
if you're like me and you have like carpal tunnel in both wrists or whatever, and you're like, but what if I can't write? I'm like, there's always a loophole if we want one. If we're ready to really take that exploration into the self, there's always a loophole. So one of my best friends was recently telling me, they're like, oh, I kind of want to chronicle all the things that I've been going through, but it's just like I don't have time to like sit down and write it all. And I was like, you do realize you've just been messaging me for like an hour and a half. That's one. But also two, I was like, these handy dandy phones, they work really well. Voice notes do the same thing.
yeah, yeah. I used to make voice notes.
Yeah. And they're so good because even if you go back and you listen to it, you're like, wow, I was going through that, or like, wow, I thought like that, or like, wow, huh, things have really changed.
It's
But you
true.
get to know yourself deeper. Talk it out.
Yeah, it's true with anything. Reading, I'm now into Audible books. For me, just the way my life is right now, that's
Hmm.
I really want to read. I want to absorb certain things. And so my way to do it right now is Audible books. That seems to work for me. So there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. For sure, I agree with that. One, if I had 50 Cent to add to that as well, and perhaps this is different from, I don't know if this is necessarily true for everyone, but for me, what works is early mornings.
Mm.
If I can do this kind of activity in the morning, those morning hours are so precious. Those morning hours are so precious. And most of us just sleep right through them, which is also fine. But when you experience what those hours have to offer, it's, and I say that with confidence because I heard it from so many very, very profound teachers from all different faiths who resonate all on this point, that those early morning hours are magical hours that have so much to give us if we get up and we use that time to connect
Yeah.
with ourselves, to connect with God, and then to offer ourselves to God, to offer where we're actually at. So once you connected with yourself, like you're saying, through these practices of journaling and really going deeper, asking yourself that question each time, is that really where I'm at? Is that really what I want? Is that really how I feel? Then you can go into those, there's so much nourishment there.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much deeper nourishment that will then fuel the rest of your day with contentment or happiness, or it fills that hole. We're all looking to fill that hole in so many ways. And
And not only, yeah, not only will it fill that hole, but we forget and I just did until you said that again. I was like, I just forgot and remembered again. The reason why we're doing this is to shift our focus in order to shift our desires, because what we constantly desire is what will come about and manifest. So the
right,
more that we
right,
are, right. So this is what this was all about, right? So the more that we are getting in touch with who we are, what we really want, and focusing on those desires, meditating on those desires, then it brings more happiness into our life, because actually they start manifesting.
yeah,
And we start seeing the ways in which they manifest, rather than now where everywhere we look, we see discontentment because we are actually discontent.
yeah,
It's like, is the world broken, or am I living in this shattered glass curse dream place where it all looks like it's broken, but actually it's working the way it was built to run, which is kind of like a jail. And I am sitting here with all of these big, lofty spiritual dreams and hopes and ideals, trying to get like a roller coaster fun ride and cotton candy out of a jail institution. A little backwards.
yeah. I you're reminding me of times when I've looked out over a beautiful view of nature, trees, grass, birds, and it's been tainted with, yeah, life is crap. Because
Right?
that's the vision I've been coming from. That's where
Yeah.
my mind has been. That's where my heart has been. And I've been in situations that have been chaos, and I'm stable, grounded,
Mm-hmm.
present.
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, and I also want to, I want to ask you a question. You're talking about early morning hours. Now, how long have you been hearing about the benefits of those early morning hours?
My whole life.
Whole life, right? Whole
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
I guarantee you didn't start speaking about it like this, with that, like, because I could see it. I was like, wow, it's like you lit up and all whatever,
Yeah.
until you actually had to start consistently doing it.
Yeah.
So really the best like practice for any of anything, spirituality, changing your mindset, is to get in there and do the damn thing. Like you have to
100%.
get in and do the damn thing.
Yeah. Feel it. Yeah. Yeah. You can
Have
talk
to.
about the cake all day, but until you don't try it, you ain't going to know what it tastes like. For
And
sure.
so, yeah. And so, like, I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, yeah, yeah. It really will. It'll change your life, and it replaces those other obsessive tendencies with positive ones. So now you got a positive addiction. You start to feel like, but if you don't wake up on that day, where like if you have a schedule, it's like Mondays, I wake up at this time. And then if
Yeah.
you start to not do that, you're like, but it feels weird now. It feels a little bit different. And Srila Prabhupada would say, habit means practice. So
Yeah.
practice. And he'd say that about all of spiritual life, but I think it goes for all of life. Whatever we're doing, that it's just we've just practiced it.
Yeah.
So we've practiced being discontent and sad and depressed and all these things, and we can get addicted to the sadness because that can feel safe, like it's protecting us, but it's not.
I just want to read Manjari for Life's comments.
Yeah.
I so appreciate this acknowledgement that big goals they require steps. No one ever ran a marathon without starting with 5Ks. And how can we expect 16 focused, productive rounds if we don't start with just one?
Mm.
For real though, running even starts with walking. And japa has to start with love and trust, not just adding a ritual.
And walking even starts with crawling. And crawling even starts, you ever see babies do the army crawl? They'll like do that army crawl for like a month.
Yeah. My little niece is yesterday took her first proper steps. So beautiful.
Yay!
So beautiful. Yeah.
See,
But it took 16, 17 months to get there. She was a slow one.
and that's how we're gonna cheer for all of you and like everybody else makes it like, oh my God, my friend just took the first step and like getting to know themselves. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Versus, oh, you fell? You fell over?
Right?
Oh, wow.
Like that's the only thing that
I
we
can't
get
talk to
to.
you anymore. You fell over. I can't talk to you anymore.
I'm saying, can you imagine if we did
Disassociate
that to
myself.
babies?
I know. Exactly. It's weird. It's very strange. Right. Dear Acyuta, thank you so much for all of your insights. I love hearing your insights. There's a lot of them. I love trying to break them down and make sure I got them. But I love it. I love it that it comes from a place of experience, which is invaluable. And I take a lot away from it. And when we come back to our next episode, I have a feeling we might get through a few verses. I'm just looking through them. It strikes me that there's a few which we might be able to work through. They're working on a similar vein. There's a theme through the next few verses. So I look forward to diving into those with you as well.
Yeah. And maybe that'll be kind of cool. Maybe we can take them as a chunk. Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. That's what I
yeah,
was
yeah,
thinking.
yeah. A nice chunk of like 4 verses. And yeah, that'd be cool.
Dear listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to continuing this journey with all of you. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks on
Yeah.
Wednesday, the something of February. In February now.
Yeah. Sometime in February, we'll see you.
All right. Have a good one.